Good morning, gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to talk to you all again today. I will talk on something which is very important, and that is from the military point of view. We're going to talk about the Ukraine battle. How's it going? What's happening? And what's likely to be the result? Now, that's very important. When you go into battle, you're looking for a result. Obviously, war is an extension of the political aim. That's what has been said by Field Marshal Clausewitz in his Principles of War. So obviously, the Russians had a political motive when they attacked Ukraine. And the West also has got a political motive to support Ukraine. Now we're going to examine what's been the result of this entire imbroglio, what's really happened. The first thing which comes to mind that the battle has gone on for close to 50 days. But the Russians have not been able to achieve their objective. Now that's something that must be understood. What was their objective? And why did they continue fighting? And why they could not achieve their objective? There are so many interlinked questions, The Russians had the superiority in firepower and air power. There's no doubt about that. They had the latest gadgetry, the hypersonic missiles, the S-400 system, everything, but they probably miscalculated. I would say not Putin, but the Russian generals miscalculated what and how to attack Ukraine. I draw an example, of the Bangladesh campaign in 1971, when the Indian army occupied an area as big as France inside 13 days. That's 13 days, and the whole battle was over. 100,000 Pakistani troops said, hands up, we surrender. That's what happened. Putin also probably thought the same thing when he made the offensive against Ukraine. He expected the battle to last 7 days or 10 days on the Ukrainian army, and initially they made an announcement. They asked the Ukrainian army to lay down their arms, which they didn't. Now this was a fundamental blunder in the sense the Russians failed to realize the resilience of the Ukrainian soldiers. Now, why did this happen? It happened basically because the Anglo-Saxon powers, there are two of them basically, the UK and the USA, they dare not lose their hegemony over Europe. If they allow Ukraine to go the Russian way, it's going to have a very deleterious effect on the other small nations, Belgium, Poland. What the hell? And why should we be with NATO or with the Americans? We're going to lose all the time. And that is one reason they started overtly and covertly arming the Ukrainian army with the latest weaponry. This gave them the Stinger shoulder-fired missiles, the anti-tank missiles, and whatnot. And the Russians had no means to stop the inflow of the weapons inside Ukraine. They did not anticipate that it would be done. And that's a fundamental strategic error, which any army fighting must beware. I have a feeling, it's my personal feeling, that the Russian generals probably, they misled Putin. They told him, don't worry, sir, we're going to win very straight away. And when Putin realized that victory will not come his way and the Russians failed to capture Kiev and Kharkov, that was the turning point, because he changed his strategy after that. He made his objectives more reasonable, more achievable. Now he's concentrating on the eastern part of Ukraine militarily, and he's on a strong wicket there. There's no doubt about it. Now let's first talk of the war in Ukraine. What had happened now in the almost 50 days of fighting? The Russians have suffered casualties, yes, but so have the Ukrainians. In fact, the Ukrainians are worse off in the sense they are devastated. I wonder if the Ukrainian president Zelenskyy ever realized what he was getting into. There need have been no war if he'd agreed to whatever the Russians were saying, and what they were saying was very correct. What were they saying? They say there'll be no eastward expansion of NATO. What's wrong with it? That was agreed to by Clinton way back in 92. But he was the man then who overruled it and quietly started expanding eastwards. As I explained in one of my earlier videos, the basic problem with the Americans was NATO and its relevance. So they had to create an enemy, you need an enemy. Otherwise, what the hell is NATO going to do? It would have gone like the Baghdad Pact, Seattle, end of the story. So they created the enemy of Russia. And having created the enemy, they were expanding, and probably they would have incorporated Ukraine into NATO if Putin had not intervened. We must recollect and remember that for Russia it's a matter of survival, and in case they are surrounded by enemy countries all over, how does Russia survive? It's without reason, and this is where the Americans committed a mistake. They thought the Russians were bluffing, they won't attack, but they did attack. And despite all the resources, the reverses which they have been suffering, the so-called reverses, because when you are fighting a war, you are going to have collateral damage to your own forces and the civilians. Ukraine's had a terrible time. There are 4 million refugees, which could have been avoided. But Zelenskyy, short-sighted man, and maybe he had a deep hatred for the Russians. I really don't know why he should have hated the Russians so much. Because the Ukrainian people and the Russian people are of the same race. They are the Slav race. And they were being looked down by the Germans during World War II as an inferior race. The Germans never considered the Ukrainians to be equal to the Germans. The Nazis were very clear. Relax. You are an inferior human being, you keep doing all the serfdom jobs, So that was the fact. But yet this man, Zelenskyy, went about the whole thing in such a manner in which made Russians the enemy. Forgetting the fact that Ukraine had almost been a part of Russia for hundreds of years. Now that is the saddest part of the whole thing. And the man who's responsible for this is, of course, Joe Biden. But he also is playing with fire. When you play with fire, what happens? You burn yourself. Fire is not going to be limited. And he's getting burned. I remind you of the Hindu god, Kuber. Why I'm bringing it up, you'll come to know later. He's supposed to be a man with unlimited wealth. He's the god of wealth. But the Hindu philosophy tells us that even the coffers of Kuber became empty. And the same thing happened to the United States. They've been fighting wars from Korea, Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, Vietnam, just name it. They've been everywhere. And they've been spending maybe $2 or $3 trillion in their combats for the last 75 years. And the achievements are practically zero. Now, once you have that sort of thing, no achievement, and at the same time you keep on spending money, after all, there's a limit to which your economy can sustain. And America is reaching the end of the road, the teether. America doesn't have unlimited money, $40 trillion to keep on spending. Ultimately, you need economy. You need to economize. And that's where Biden and party have failed. They went into Ukraine thinking they'll be getting over the Russians very quickly, and they applied all sorts of sanctions on Russia, sanction 1, 2, 3, bank, this thing, that thing. They were very sure Russia is going to collapse. They thought the Russian ruble will collapse. But what has happened is the Russian ruble is resilient. It is now quoting at about 82 rubles to a dollar. It had gone to 190, and the Americans are surprised. Their sanctions are not having the effect desired. There's so many countries not agreeing with the sanctions, and notably that is China, India, Turkey. Turkey is their ally. So though the Russians have not really made much headway as they would have liked in Ukraine, they have not lost the will to fight. Now that's the crucial point. And who is the sufferer? Ukraine. 4 million refugees. Their cities destroyed, bombarded. But at the same time, they are not realizing, the Ukrainian people, that this man Zelenskyy has led them to their doom. The Russians have already occupied about 25 or maybe 20 to 25% of the area of Ukraine. Now that you can't deny. They've taken a lot of area in the eastern, and now they're going to concentrate on the eastern and try to capture more area. And once they do that, what's going to happen? Ukraine is going to get divided. Is this what Zelenskyy wanted? He's been making all sorts of speeches everywhere. He goes, addresses the Congress virtually, he goes and talks to the NATO Parliament, he goes and talks to the British, he talks to the Australians. I believe he went and talked even to Arnab Goswami, the Indian top news anchor. To what use? It's leading nowhere. Russians are not backing away. They've just changed their strategy. They're not going to capture Kiev and Kharkov because capturing those cities got no relevance, frankly. Even earlier I mentioned, it was just a matter of a symbol of pride. It's not required. The main aim of the Russians militarily was to destroy Ukraine. I think they have achieved that. Ukraine is not going to survive for a very long time. And I have a hunch of a feeling, and let's not take it lightly, the Russians have got something up their sleeve. And I won't be surprised if they engineer a nuclear explosion in Ukraine. Ukraine was the granary of Europe. Millions of tons of wheat being supplied all over the world. And now it's devastated, destroyed. This is what the Russian president wanted. I'm sure he wanted it. But not the Ukrainian president. But he's played into the hands of the Anglo-Saxon powers. The Anglo-Saxon powers are in a unique position. They don't want to antagonize China because China is a big economic power. At the same time, they're really not worried about Russia because Russia is not that big an economic power, but it is a military power. And that is the catch. Because you have a further configuration, a further escalation, it's going to affect the Anglo-Saxons badly. I remember reading somewhere, when Nikita Khrushchev was the prime minister, the first secretary of the Soviet Communist Party way back in 1961, he said, I just need about 5 H-bombs and England will cease to exist from the European map. Nothing wrong with it. That is the fact. And I'm told Harold Macmillan, who was the Prime Minister of England at that time, was really worried. He said, what the hell? And then there was a de-escalation and they started having detente, with the Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union collapsed because of internal contradictions, like a pack of cards. I think one could blame the leaders who came in after Brezhnev, in particular the man called Gorbachev. One sometimes wonder that he must have been a bloody CIA spy, I mean, that's beside the point. So it's an inheritance from that side, and this is where the Anglo-Saxon powers who lost their hold in Asia, and mind you, the man are not going to defend Vietnam. Taiwan. They're going to defend them. Tomorrow the Chinese launch an amphibious operation when they have the capability. They don't have it now. I wonder how many American soldiers are going to stand there in Taiwan to fight the Chinese. Are they going to use nuclear weapons? That would be the end of the great cities of America, Chicago, New York, San Francisco. They are worried of that particular devastation even now when they're egging Ukraine on. Ukraine is like a fodder for them. You keep fodder to the cannon, fire it, do it. That's what they're doing. And we have a very stupid president of Ukraine. Zelenskyy is playing into their hands this fellow, I can understand how naive he is, if that word we have to use. He's so naive. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Yes, the Russians have been stopped to a degree, but they haven't lost. The Russians have not lost. They still occupy a lot of area in Ukraine. And one can deny that. And they still have tremendous weaponry, the most sophisticated ones they have used. NATO, other day I was reading one American general saying NATO is now united and that's thanks to Biden. I say, united? What united? NATO consists of only the USA and supported by his lackey the UK. That's all, nobody else. Nobody else has the power. Even Germany, their forces are so small, and they held an exercise recently in Norway and had about 30,000-40,000 soldiers. That is a very big exercise, Baba. They don't know that the Indian army has exercises with 70,000 to 100,000 troops. Their armies are so puny, to keep talking of all this nonsense is absolutely irrelevant. What are the future now? One, the Russians are not giving up. Two, Biden and party are putting fuel into the fire. They want the battle to continue. They are hoping it doesn't escalate. So they will not themselves come into combat. They will be giving weapons through Poland and this thing and that, that sort of a thing. And again, they are going to use these countries like Poland and all as bloody fodder, They don't mind it so long as the battle continues and they retain their hegemony. That's all. They're interested. They're not interested in freedom of X, Y, Z or something. America never believed in freedom for anybody other than, of course, they have freedom at home, but they don't believe in freedom outside. What did they do in the Shah of Iran? They were propping up that man who used to take all the dissidents in the helicopter, tie them with a rope and throw them from 10,000 feet. That's what he used to do. Ultimately, he had to run away. He didn't have a bloody place to hide, He was running here and there and all that, And the Americans then gave their hands up, Baba, please don't come to us, Now, so let us accept that the battle is now at a very critical stage. Russians have not given up. I don't think they're going to give up. And the Ukrainian president Zelenskyy is playing into the hands of the Western powers. So basically their aim is to reinforce their hegemony over Europe. I think France has realized the predicament, and so has the German Chancellor. So it has to be seen now what happens next. It's a very dangerous situation. Let's be very clear about it. A very dangerous situation. And I am not a warmonger, but I can tell you there could be escalation at any time. And that could be World War III. The Americans and the Britishers and some of, the Ukrainian expatriates who keep on writing on so many sites and jumping with joy and saying, Are Baba, so we have shot down one Russian plane, so many tanks, this thing, that thing. That's all irrelevant. In a battle, you're going to lose planes, tanks, and all that. But the Russians haven't given up. Only thing, I fault the Russians for a defective strategy. And whoever the Russian general was, I think he should be put behind bars and sent to Russia. Siberia, that's a wonderful place for him to relax, to think why. Here was a tailor-made opportunity, and if the Russians had really studied the case, they would have won within 15 days. But the very fact that they haven't been able to win in 50 days, though they have achieved their aims to an extent, but that doesn't help because Ukraine is not going to stop fighting. And it's going to continue. It's a long drawn out battle. I do hope it doesn't become another Vietnam, continues for 3-4 years. But the person who's going to suffer the most, who's going to suffer the most? The Ukrainian people. Already 4 million refugees. You're going to have 10 million tomorrow. Their cities will be devastated. Which is the grandeur of Europe is finished. And who's going to blame for it? Who's to take the blame? I got only two people to think about. One is the Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, and the second is Joe Biden. This man's got such a short horizon, he doesn't know what the hell is happening to him. He's forgotten all about what all the Americans did when they attacked Saddam Hussein, got him hanged. When they went against Gaddafi and got him killed. I mean, all that has no meaning. That is nothing. We wanted to do it, we are allowed. But no, others are not allowed. We are going to instigate the world. They tried to instigate India. China has shown them the thumb. Get out. What about the Indians? Well, Modi is playing a tightrope. But recently a very well-known commentator from Hong Kong, from China said, India is neutral, but in such a situation you can't be neutral. There's no neutralism. India has to decide whom to support, and I think we must support the Russians. Because the Anglo-Saxons cannot be trusted. They've been against India for the last 7 decades. They armed Pakistan. They created the Kashmir problem. They created all the problems around India. Nixon even sent the 7th Fleet in 1971 to try and stop the Indian Army's advance in Bangladesh. Only thing General Westmoreland knew better than Nixon, so things didn't work out. The Ukraine battle is at a crucial stage, gentlemen, and it's worth looking at what is happening. In sum total, I can say the Russians have achieved their objective to an extent, but they could have done better. And that is the crux of the issue. And as far as the Western powers are concerned, I think they're playing with fire. Putin has committed mistakes, no doubt, in this campaign. But he's a resilient man. He's realized his mistake. He's changed tactics. Let's see what happens further. And now I will close now, gentlemen, with my standard salute. Jai Hind.